So beginning with position postings, what are the potential problems? Well, first, there are reams of resumes. When a company posts a position, a volume of job seekers will apply, both qualified and unqualified. It is easy to get lost in volume. It is hard to find the diamond in the rough. The second problem is counterfeit classifieds. Here's an insight. Not all postings are real. What? You gotta be kidding. Why would someone place an ad or post a position that's not real? Well, here are 3 answers of why that's true. First is identity theft. Think about it. Think how much information about you that you give out to a potential employer. You give them work history, salary history, your name, your address, maybe more. Yeah, it's a real concern that some ads are placed that are counterfeit merely as a means to identity theft. Secondly, companies can post ads in order to conduct a cheap salary survey. Here's the deal. A company posts an ad requiring current salary information. What they get back is information about what others are paying for that job. It's kind of a cheap salary survey. If you wonder whether or not you're paying your inventory control manager the appropriate dollars in the marketplace, then place an ad for his position or her position and see what people say is their current salary. Cheap salary surveys. And then finally is bogus business. You know, some unethical retail outplacement firms place ads like the one that's here in your notebook. It looks genuine, but in fact, it's not. Look at these. They look like real ads, real positions, real fancy search firm. And you respond to that ad hoping for an interview. But instead, in a couple of weeks, you'll get in the mail a free gift. It's a book on how to find a job, given to you by an unethical retail outplacement firm trying to allure you to come in for a visit. Don't go to these kinds of companies. They will charge you thousands of dollars for what you'll get here at the Career Transition Workshop merely by just showing up or listening to this CD. Well, we've talked about the potential problems of position postings. What are the solution sources of position postings? Well, let's take a look at where you can find position postings in some order of importance. Let's first take a look at the most important source for position postings, and that would be professional trade journals. And professional trade journals are journals published by a trade or professional association to keep their users and members informed about issues and ideas that are going on in the industry, but often will have classifieds posted within the magazine. For instance, there might be an industry-specific trade journal. I'm going to use Modern Healthcare as an example. Or there might be a position-specific example. You might subscribe to the CIO magazine or the Journal of Accountancy magazine, depending upon your profession. But the optimal professional trade journal is one that intersects both the industry and the position, those crosshairs. And an example of combining healthcare and, say, IT would be the magazine or the journal Healthcare Communications, or combining accounting with healthcare would be HFMA journal. And I could have done this and given examples for other industries or other positions. But again, the point here is the best professional trade journal is one that is in the crosshairs that talks about specifically your type of position the job that you're after, in the industry you're after, and if there's a trade journal associated with that. And if you're a member of that professional trade association, you're probably familiar with the publications it produces, and if not, a good public library would have knowledge of what professional trade association journals and magazines are available. A second source would be internet job sites. Often thought is the most important source, but you can get lost in the traffic here. The first website we would obviously recommend is the targeted company websites, meaning you are developing targets. Go look at those targets' websites, see if they have job postings within those sites. Second would be specialty vertical meta search engines such as Indeed.com or LinkUp.com or SimplyHired.com. Indeed.com aggregates results from supersized sites, large job boards, employee websites, newspapers, and more. Good search filters and a great online and mobile tools are also provided by Indeed.com. We certainly recommend it to each job seeker. A fourth type of internet job site would be supersized sites. Those would be Monster.com or CareerBuilder.com. Obviously, though, there is a problem with volume. These sites are attacked by millions of job seekers, and when a single job appears, thousands are responding to it. Finally, there are specialized sites such as lawjobs.com or salesjobs.com or dice.com, which is for technology jobs. But here's a warning you should be made aware of. Many supersized and specialized sites are operated by contingency search firms. And once you give them your resume, they then shop your resume to prospective employers. You might think that's a good deal, but if they get your resume to that employer first and you show up second, then that firm is going to need to pay their fee if they plan to hire you, and that could serve as more of an impediment to hiring you than an enticement for working with contingency firms. We'll talk more about contingency firms later. A third position posting solution source would be local business newspapers. Most large cities' public libraries will either have databases or internet access to major metropolitan newspaper classified ads, not just of the home city, but of maybe the top 50 to 75 cities across the United States. The next solution source would be executive newsletter services. These are membership-based organizations that provide job listings to its members. The Job Seeker's Notebook has an exhibit that highlights information about ExecuNet, NetShare, CEO Network, and HR Network. Look at that exhibit and use that as you can. Our suggestion on using executive newsletter services is look at the samples that they might offer, maybe even ask for a dated sample that you could look at. And if it looks like that is a good source for you, then it may be worth the investment to subscribe. The final source would be job fairs and job hotlines. We put this lowest on the list. It is lowest as far as a good return on time invested is concerned. Best thing about job fairs is the networking you do while standing in line. And job hotlines have all but been eliminated with website listings. So there are the sources for solutions on position postings. let's now look at our recommended approach. Here it goes. Devote no more than 2 half days if you're a big buck person, and no more than 4 half days if you're a little buck person to position postings. The easiest way is to be busy in a job search is to sit in front of a computer all day long, day after day, responding to position postings. It's easy, but it's not a wise use of so much time. Stay within the blocked time frames. Block the time on your weekly calendar so that you only work this task at that time. Best times to conduct your research are Monday mornings and Friday afternoons, when nobody really wants to talk to you. Plan on spending part of your time in reviewing listings, part in researching suspects, and part in responding to position postings. Third, rate job prospects, like giving them A or a B or a C, against your ideal job. Then respond in priority order. That way, if you come to the end of your time block, you simply recycle the lower priority prospects into the following week. Odds are the jobs would not have been filled by then, and if there are no new prospects, you'll have time to respond to these leftovers. And finally, once you have responded to an open position, you can treat that company as a target and then try to network in as well. So that's the commentary on position postings. Let's move on to headhunters. And again, let's address potential problems. Here are 3 questions, though, before we begin, related to the potential problems with executive recruiters. They are: who do they serve? Who do they seek? Who do they select? Who do they serve? Do they mostly serve their clients or the candidates? A, this was a trick question. The answer is really neither. They serve themselves. Their goals in priority order are serving the clock, which means a quick match, serving their client, serving the candidates. Time drives their business. The sooner the match is consummated, the less work is required and the more profitable the business. This concern with the clock may explain why they really don't spend much time talking to you. Second question is who they serve. Who do they serve? Most individual recruiters work a specialized niche. They're only interested in you when they need you. Otherwise, you are an interruption in their lives. Who do they select? Generally, if you are unemployed, they're not really all that interested in you. Let's do the math again. Let's say we have 100 open jobs or positions to be filled. Executive Recruiting News reports that executive recruiters fill 15% of all these jobs, as we previously mentioned. Now, executive recruiters will tell you that 80% of all jobs they fill are filled through primary research, while 20% come from their database of prospects. So what is primary research? Primary research is something retained search firms do. It is researching people who currently hold similar positions in companies targeted by their clients. So if you are unemployed, odds are your name doesn't surface. But you might be in their database. Okay, let's again doing the math. That would mean that you're in the 20% group. That would be 20% of 15%, or 3%. Or 3 out of the original 100 jobs are filled from executive recruiters' databases. So the question I would have is, well, then how do I get myself into their database? Their database is mostly made up of prior candidates submitted to clients on previous search assignments. These candidates passed their screening, but were rejected by the clients in favor of the winning candidate. Alternatively, not all the names in their databases were prior candidates. So let's say that 1 out of every 3 names in their databases comes from unsolicited candidates. The net result would suggest that a successful unsolicited resume to a recruiter stands about a 1 out of 100 chance of landing a job. Executive Recruiters News also reports that 11% of executive recruiters polled said that they had a bias against displaced workers. And they were the ones who told the truth. All of this analysis is not to say that you should avoid working with headhunters. Simply don't tie your hopes on recruiters finding you a job and saving you the hard work. All right, so those are the problems with headhunters. Let's look at solution sources. You have heard us refer to contingency search firms and retained search firms. So what's the difference? Contingency firms are paid only if a candidate they present gets hired. Consequently, they don't spend much time doing anything for which they may not get paid. So they collect resumes and then pass them over to their clients, hoping that they will select one of them. Retained search firms are paid up front, usually in 3 installments. The first at the start, the last maybe 60, 90 days later. Why? The answer lies in the infrastructure of each type of search firm. Contingency firms are structured like inside sales shop or a telemarketing call center. They have resumes of candidates, so they call employers hoping for a hit, hoping that there is a vacancy that they can jump on. Retained firms are typically a leveraged organization with principals who have direct client contact, associates handling operations, and researchers finding candidates and making initial contact. Retained search equals research. These firms are paid up front to research candidates working in other companies and then try to recruit them away to work for their client. Another way to look at the differences is data dumpers versus screeners. Once a contingency firm finds an employer who may have an interest, they start dumping resumes on them, hoping one will get hired and therefore they'll get paid. Once a retained search firm finds a candidate who may have an interest, they start the screening process from the researcher to the associate to the principal. Contingency firms are trying to get any candidate in, while retained search firms are trying to screen out all candidates but the finalists. And a final way to look at the differences of these two is in the dollars made by the people they search for. As a general rule, contingency recruiters work with little buck to medium buck people, while retained search firms work with big buck folks. But here's a warning. Beware of contingency firms that blast your resume out to everybody. It may cost you a job opportunity. If a search firm has proof that the company received a resume from them before they got one from you, that company is going to be required to pay their fee. Some companies would choose to drop you rather than pay that fee. All right, those are the differences between contingency search firms and retained search firms. Let's look at some other points related to headhunters. Specialists are not generalists. You want to go after the specialist in your field. Recruiters who are generalists conduct searches for various positions across a variety of industries. They may only conduct one search a year for your targeted position in your targeted industry. Don't waste your time. Reaching out to them is not an effective use of your time. Reach out for those that are specialists, those that niche in your niche. How about in-town versus out-of-town recruiters? Geography is mostly irrelevant. Someone out of town can be conducting a search for a company in your town. Big international firms are just made up of many local individual specialists. So don't waste your time trying to meet with people that are in town. Matter of fact, you may be needing to contact recruiters that are out of town to let them know about your job search. And finally, recruiters are not counselors. Recruiters usually make lousy career counselors. They have limited experience with the problems and solutions related to other job search techniques. Take their advice cautiously. For example, they may require you to change your resume to fit their template. Well, change it for them, but keep the one you've designed with the hiring authority in mind. Well, let's talk about the recommended approach for headhunters. Devote no more than 1/2 day for big buck folks or no more than 2 half days for little buck folks. Notify your niche now. The only mass mailing you should ever do is to recruiters who specialize in your field and in your industry. The Seeker's Notebook has an example of a broadcast letter to targeted recruiters. Look under Section 4, Exhibit M. Directories of recruiters come free or fee-based. Two good sources of recruiters can be found again in your Seeker's Notebook, and they are searchfirm.com by Chuan, a developer of recruiting software, and is one of the best free directories. And then there's the Directory of Executive Recruiters by Kennedy Publications, and it is the best fee-based directory. Might be worth an investment to get up-to-date information from Kennedy. So, what do you need to know when a recruiter calls? I would suggest that you ask them these questions. Who are they? Are they a contingency firm or a retained search firm? Are they a research associate or the principal with the firm who has the client contact? Their answers will shape your answers to the questions they will ask. Who do they represent? Who is their client? If they are unwilling to give you a specific name, then ask them to describe the company. Ask them specific questions about the company to try to figure out who they are. When did they begin the search? Typically, during the first month, recruiters are researching the position and candidates. During the second, they are screening candidates. During the third, they are presenting candidates to the company. During the fourth, the company is making their selection. Consequently, if they are in the third or fourth month, you are probably not going to be presented, but just available for backup. If they are beyond the fourth month, though, odds are their first slate of candidates was all thrown out. Find out why. And if you can solve the problem that they had with the first slate, you're going to be at the front of the line. What are the qualifications for the ideal candidate is a great question to ask. Or do they have a position description? These are really the most important questions. With their answers, you can customize your cover letter as we explained in Session 4, Communication Connection.